Prior to the riots of June 1969, few LGBT groups publicly assembled despite their constitutional right to do so. However, after Stonewall, a movement was born in which LGBT organizations sprang into existence. This next story from 2003 takes an historical look at gay spaces and the groups that sought to mobilize homosexuals at a time when the fundamental meeting place was the bar.
Prior to the 69 riots, the only place where we could come together were bars. And those bars were not conducive to community organizing. They were often quite hostile to their own customers. You know, we mark the beginning of the contemporary queer liberation movement with the Stonewall riots, but we know that really our movement is much older than that. Certainly the Mattachine Society and the Daughters of Bilitis were pioneers and heroes that risked so much to begin to create a safe space to be an openly gay man or lesbian. These spaces that might be available to us if we were born into an ethnically identified community or religiously identified community were not available to us. And so it's almost like we had to create settlement houses for this wave of queer immigrants into community. And LGBT community centers are those settlement houses.
Gay Liberation Front was sort of, I guess, to be corny, it was the answer to a lot of people's prayers. I mean, it came out of nowhere, and it was gone before you really could say Gay Liberation Front. But what happened in that year and a half, changed so many lives. GLF was born, or no, literally, the first meeting, a group of people said, let's meet and see what we can do with the energy we have here from the riots.
Alternate University, a radical new school in Greenwich Village, offered unorthodox classes on everything from Marxism to karate. And on July 24th, less than a month after Stonewall, Alternate U became the birthplace of the GLF.
It became the place for their first dances, which was just unheard of, that you would publicize a homosexual dance.
But disagreements began on the very first night in the overcrowded room at Alternate U. Some women felt alienated and left to form radical lesbians. The trans community split off to found Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, and still others broke away and started the Gay Activist Alliance.
The founders of the Gay Activist Alliance, from their point of view, GLF was not sufficiently structured to get things done, and so they broke off and founded their own organization in December of 1969. They started talking really from the very beginning about needing to find some kind of alternative to the bars, which were seen as being syndicate-run, places that would encourage self-hate rather than an affirmation. So they managed to acquire an old firehouse on Worcester Street in Soho. And among other things, they started to dance every Saturday night. You would have maybe 1,000, almost all men, a few women, coming to dance at what was clearly a political organization. And indeed, there were times when they would hold demonstrations at 1 a.m. in the morning and literally take the entire dance to go harass the city council committee member who was giving us trouble.
Lesbian feminist liberation, LFL is what we called it, grew out of GLF, Gay Liberation Front, and GAA, Gay Activist Alliance, when the women felt that they needed to separate from the men. Lesbian women at that point really needed their own space. We met first at the firehouse and then moved from there to around Union Square, and then eventually purchased one of the city buildings on 20th Street. And they were just social gathering places for women, and they were wonderful, and I miss that kind of space.
As black women, we didn't think our needs were being met there. I'm not saying that they weren't doing the work, but they weren't doing the work. We needed something else. So, we got us a space, and we named ourselves Salsa Soul Sisters. We met at the Washington Square Methodist Church, and we met there for many years.
The Lesbian History Archives is a mixture of a museum and a family album. We have archival material and all the wonderful little things that lesbian women have collected all their lives. Back in the 1970s, we would bring people together to have a space to talk and get to know each other. I mean, this was back then when there really were very few spaces that women could go to do anything.
In 1983, many of these divergent political and social groups came together when community leaders acquired an old schoolhouse.
Like 300 organizations existed. There was a lot of activity, but it had no locus. Everybody was spread out in whatever found places they could be. It was such a powerful idea to say, we now can have a piece of real estate that's gay and lesbian owned. It's ours, nobody can take it away from us, and we have control over it.
One of the functions of the center is to create a common ground for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and AIDS activists.
Many organizations have been born here. There are some that people know better than others. Probably the most dramatic story is the birth of ACT UP, which happened in 1987 when Larry Kramer came.
He described what he saw as the epidemic in our community and put forth a call to action. And ACT UP was founded on that Tuesday night.
There are still people who think that this is a white man's organization. When they come in the building, they must see us here. This is a support for all people.
Our history and our culture needs a place to be born and then a place to grow.
Today, there are about probably over 170 LGBT community centers around the United States. When people come into a center, they're not just bringing their gay identity or their lesbian identity, they're bringing the whole package, their race, their age, their religious identification, whether or not they're a parent or want to be a parent, their class. And we as a movement, if we're ever going to get anywhere and achieve the justice that we want for queer people, we have to wake up and know that our agenda has to be justice for all people, and that we've got to consciously work with the choice movement, with the anti-death penalty movement, with an economic justice agenda in order to get this country where we all want it to be.